Okay, so we're all incredibly excited to have you back. I wanted to start, I suppose I should always start with the writer, Sally, so I'm going to start with you. You have previously described Anne Lister as you being kind of in love with Anne Lister. You've also described her as, I've written it down, a shag bandit rubberknickers. There is that too. But one of the things that I was struck by this episode particularly is that you could describe her as a shag bandit rubberknickers who's settled down, or you could describe her as a middle-aged woman with a really long to-do list who's getting on with it. So I wondered how you think of Anne. I know that you've obviously studied all her diaries, her letters. How do you think of her in your head when you're writing about her?
By this point in her life, she was 40. This is sort of 1834, so she was 43-ish. And I think by this point in her life, she had decided she wanted to settle down. She had played the field a bit. And by this point, it was, what we dramatised in season 1 in 1832 was the breakdown of the relationship with Vere Hobart was a kind of watershed moment in her life. And she had, by that point, she inherited Shibden in 1826, but I think after the failure of the relationship with Vere Hobart, she kind of, I think it was a sort of lowest ebb, and she came back to Shibden deciding that she was going to make a go of Shibden and life in Halifax. So she looked around carefully at who she could settle down with, and Anne Walker was by far the sort of number one option. And
not a bad one.
She was pretty innocent, like, but also very rich.
Yes, pretty and rich, pretty good.
Mainly that, yeah.
So I think she had, at this point in her life, this is why I thought it was an interesting place to start the drama as I did in season 1 and to continue it here. It's about her having had this very complex, rich earlier life, now trying to settle down and to, in Anne Lister style, doing it with real, on a big scale by amalgamating her estate with a neighbour, not just getting married to another woman, but amalgamating 2 estates so that she became a much wealthier, powerful person in Halifax because she took on the families, the tribe, as she called it, of Anne Walker. And that answers the question I thought you were going to ask me.
Thank you.
But then what you said is, how do I think of Anne Lister when I'm writing her? Which is like, that's the most complex question on earth. She's such an extraordinary person. There's so much to her character to try and capture that on the page, and for Suranne to capture it in performance it's a huge task. It's like the problem with the diaries is what not to put in, because the hardest choices are what to leave out, because there's so much stuff. So I think what we've tried to do is create a rounded, massive, epic character that's rounded, but that resembles Anne Lister in some shape or form. I think you could write 1,000 different Anne Listers and they'd all be true and accurate. And this one's ours.
This one's yours, yeah. So Suranne, one of the things that I've seen you model is a face mask that said, "What would Anne Lister do?" And yes. I have to say that, on certain occasions I have tried to channel Anne Lister, in a difficult day. I wondered, as an actor, she's obviously a brilliant part to play, but it's a big part. Yeah. It's not only a big part, it's a big personality that you're kind of turning into. Yeah. How do you find it? Do you find it with the shoes, with the voice? How do you get to that person?
I think we did a lot of work before season 1. So me and Sal would talk in depth, so all the detail was there underpinning every scene, and then we looked at the physicality, we stomped around Shibden, and then Soph did that another time, didn't you? And I would walk around the rehearsal room, going from, straight and upright to Liam Gallagher, I was trying everything out. And then I guess just on day 1, we did a drone shot, day 1 of season 1, and I got the cane and the hat, and Sally said, just walk up, you know, and do some stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And I did some stuff, and I guess it happens now. So, and I think the balls that she's got now in season 2 to kind of, you know, she's got her wife and she's setting up her life, she's getting the business, she's spending her money. It's like supercharged. You know, she's fighting the tribe, she's protecting her assets, she's fighting for what she wants, for the wills and the division of the estate. And I think that helped, you know, kind of give us this Anne Lister, which I think is different to series 1. Yeah. She's, I mean, she's not just on fire, she's dangerous, I think, because there's so much going on with her that she is on the cusp of losing control almost at any point, because she's so excited with her life. And that's how we find her.
And she's kind of always on the front foot. It reminds me actually of the thing about Northcote House. As soon as the idea comes to sell it and she don't get the price she wants, it's like, I'll turn it into a casino then. Yeah. Which she does, or may do. As the series goes on.
But it's tiring, is the other thing. You can easily get, if you don't pace yourself, you can easily get exhausted with
the energy level.
With the energy level, yeah. Mm.
And Sophie, so Anne, she's in a different position. She looks very well. You look very well, you know. It's not always been well, and you're looking well. What's interesting about your character is that if you think about it in a kind of timeline, obviously it's a completely different character to Anne Lister, but you're stepping into your adulthood. You're trying to step your at an earlier stage than Anne Lister, and how you're stepping into that is the interesting part of Anne, isn't it?
Yeah, I think certainly series 1, and we carry that on in this. It's her discovery of her independence. I think she's been massively, purposefully infantilized by her family, because it allows them to sort of keep control over her, and it's not so much her they're interested in, it's her money. So she should be completely sort of independent and living her adult life, but she's not. She's been stuck in this little cage, and it's really only Anne Lister that opens her world up for her. So I think when we meet her in series 1, episode 1, it's the beginning of that journey of her blossoming into the woman she would like to be, and it's Anne Lister that sort of shows her the way she might be able to do that.
There's a sense somehow, though, that there's a bit of impatience around how long it takes, isn't there?
It takes a while.
little bit.
Yeah.
With everybody around her, though, I think that's the thing of she's so well read, she's so informed, she's so ahead of everybody. And as Sal said, it's not just, you know, Northcote House, let's turn it into this. It's every idea, every conversation. She's 5 steps ahead of everybody. Until she gets caught out every now and then by Anne Walker, which is the beauty of their relationship. But yeah, in general, she's waiting for everybody to keep up, especially her sister.
Yes, traipsing along behind her. I mean, we can't know what's going to happen in the series. We've got a few kind of hints, but the major hint is obviously around Mariana and what's going to happen around that. And we don't know, but there's a sense that
I think some of you do know, don't you? The ones that have read the diaries.
Okay, the diaries. Okay, the diaries. So there's a sense of the fragility of your relationship, isn't there? Because there's a kind of, you know, I don't want to call it like while I was talking about it, I just felt like a kind of black raven coming in to kind of to ruin it. But there's that fragility that's that you're aware of and you're not so aware of, and that's an interesting thing to play with, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think Anne Walker feels like she's on this bungee cord, and she takes 10 steps forward and then 10 steps back, and she's constantly trying to be enough and be comfortable with who she is and be comfortable in this relationship, and then she sort of trips herself up, and that is frustrating for Anne Lister. And it is right, I think this spectre of the other women, particularly Mariana, she does occupy this space. I think Anne Walker isn't aware of perhaps Anne Lister's past, but she starts to understand, and that's incredibly hard for her to process. And I mean, she's barely understood who she might be, let alone that Anne Lister's already gotten there, and other women are like this, and it's enormous for her, and I think it puts a huge pressure on their relationship. As you say, fragile is the word. It is a really fragile in the way that it's beautiful and tender and delicate, but also breakable, and that's what's so beautiful and fascinating about series 2. We're exploring. They had their big romantic happy ending, but what next? And is it going to work? And that's what kind of draws us back to these women, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think looking at a marriage post the beauty on the hilltop is wonderful, and like she says there's no child to bond them, there's no marriage certificate. So Sally looks at what it means for a same-sex marriage couple, that, you know, the secret marriage that they're trying to navigate, what society puts on them. So the fragility comes from that. And then there's the past relationship with Mariana, which Anne's always had these huge, big emotional relationships. She falls hard and fast for Veer, and with Mariana it's been ups and downs and emotionally draining and taxing. And then she meets Anne Walker, and she questions herself whether it's love. I think that we will discover with Anne Lister in the series that it is love, but it's a very different kind. It's a real relationship, and what Gentleman Jack does on primetime television is not a secondary story. It's a detailed look, a slow, wonderful look at a marriage, and how brilliant that we've got to tell this second part of it, which is, you know, it's the truth of what these women go through and went through under with mental health as well, kind of floating around constantly, and how forward thinking that she, after the marriage, you know, Steph, she put her in Steph's care to kind of really build her up to be able to come back and live with her at Shibden. I mean, it's wonderful, and the way that Sally in the diary merges is beyond brilliant.
I think the great thing as well about the relationship with Anne Walker is it was the only time it was actually tested, because Anne Walker had the courage to actually move in with her, which none of her other lovers did. It did come. It was very tested.
Yeah, because it's a relationship, a living relationship.
Yeah.
It's an everyday relationship.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I mean, it's always. I mean, part of a marriage is the family. You know, the tribe, as yours is referred to, but the family, and that's interesting as well, isn't it? Because a lot of this is actually about the two different families, how they might have been friends, how they're not friends, how one is seen as family is odd, and the other one is just basically circling the money. I have to say, did you enjoy writing that kind of part of it?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was kind of one of the big themes through the season, was how what Anne Walker's family can do to show their disapproval of this relationship.
All in the same colour as well, I notice. Whenever they're disapproving, they all seem to be in blue.
Yes.
Really? Oh, okay. That wasn't planned. But, okay. I mean, one of the things I like writing best is the Listers around their dining table. You know, and what's so wonderful is that Anne Lister's family were actually so supportive of this that they totally accepted who Anne was, largely because they didn't have much choice, because she was so formidable. But in great contrast to Anne Walker's family, the Listers, Anne Lister's aunt.
It's confusing.
So many Annes.
And Anne Lister was incredibly supportive of Anne, and you know, she probably did know what it was all about, but she was, you know, profoundly fond of Anne. And it's clear that Marion and Jeremy kind of just went along with it and didn't really rock the boat. They just accepted who Anne was because she was so clear and open about who she was. And so they'd grown up. She'd grown up with them, and they'd grown up with her. So by this point in Anne's life, they'd accepted it, where it was all a bit of a shock for Miss Walker's family to realise that she was gay. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very beautiful element of it, that welcoming element of the family in contrast to the others. We do get a slight sense that, you know, with the marriage playing out over this series, and obviously you can't reveal things, but that unless you've read the diaries, but but that sense of of everything playing in, the families kind of circling as well, is a very strong thing, isn't it? Because even now, marriages have to kind of overcome the families that you're within.
Yeah, and you know, she says it at the beginning, and Walker, got there in the end, who is brilliantly played by Steph, and you know, she lists them, the Edwards, the Rawsons, of this, that, you know, you're going to have to fight all those people. And as we saw in series 1, Anne Walker was already kind of on a losing streak with that, because there's so many of them and so few of us. But, you know, if you have read the diary, then you will know this. They managed it, and they stayed together. But it's hard, and that's the beauty, the ups and downs. And it's certainly not easy, and there's a lot of arguments, and and a lot of fun though. What's amazing is about Sally's writing is that these are huge issues that we're seeing here, and beautifully drawn, but it's funny because life is, and these characters are, but it's not like none of them are silly characters. They're all so real, and that's testament to Sally's.
Hopefully they are. Sometimes they're a bit silly, but
yeah, well, life's silly.
But I mean, you notice even like when we just watched it now, this is, you know, an audience that's not seen this episode before, and the humour comes out of the characters always. Like, you're laughing because you know, Anne Lister is being so Anne Lister. Like, that's one of the things that is the delight in it, isn't it? I mean, you must enjoy writing that as well, the humour.
Oh, it's brilliant writing for Anne Lister. I mean, it's like it's you know, she's so big, you can't. It's how big is your imagination, and it's just never big enough with Anne Lister. You know, it's she's such an extra. You know, she could do anything, Anne Lister. She's like from another planet. You know? It's interesting though, thinking about families though, because to be fair to Anne Walker's family, they were protective of her. Whoever she would have married, they'd have been protective of her wealth because she was loaded. And you know, at that time, that would have been their job in the absence of her parents being dead and her brother being dead and that sort of thing.
They're almost like bankers.
So for them to protect her from who they regarded as a fortune hunter and a predator, they were kind of just doing their job. What's interesting though is that Anne Lister, I don't think she was a predator in that sense. You know, when you read the diaries, you realise how much she looked after Anne Walker. She really did look after. I mean, there's so much detail in the diary that I just can't reflect in the show about how she was really. She when they were courting in season 1, she was over there every day. Really, what she did brilliantly as well was help her get over her illness and get her out of that gilded cage that her family had got her in. And you know, the things she saw and did, and the travelling she did because she attached herself to Anne Lister, just really enhanced and enriched her life.
I just felt that I should mention there's a particular speech that was just attributed to Francis of Assisi. But I feel like I've heard that before.
That's a bit of an anachronism, not only because of where you've heard it before, but actually I don't think that Francis of Assisi did say that. I think somebody invented it in about 1910 and attributed it to Francis of Assisi, but I thought it was too good to miss that little connection to Mrs. Thatcher.
Because there is a definite kind of, you know, element, isn't there?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I mean, you're definitely better dressed, but like...
Yes, exactly. No handbag for her. But, I mean, as well, we haven't seen, you know, a Tory like this, you know, and that we're all kind of fascinated by her, and we're not supposed to like her all the time, you know, and that's, you know, whatever your politics are, but I think it's fascinating to see a character like this with her politics. And Sally, you know, we go from the relationship, as you saw there, we cover the canals, you know, the economy, the steam trains, coal. It's wonderful to have this piece of history here. So it isn't just about the relationship as season 1 wasn't. It's about a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, this fascinating polymath. You know, she's
in a very particular time as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you have to remind yourself, because she's so wonderful to play, and so, you know, confident with who she is, you have to remind yourself of that. And I mean, there's a big reminder there because everyone's dressed in period costumes, which is, but it's, you know, it's amazing for it to be in 1834.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the emotion that you go through in the second series, Sophie, because I know that in the first series, you know, obviously I was reading it, and one of the things you said was you were actually emotionally quite wrung out by the end of it, because you went through quite a lot. So I'm hoping that you won't be quite as wrung out for this one. But
well, I did have a baby halfway through the shoot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
we filmed it during COVID.
Oh yes. Okay. So yeah. All right. Okay. So perhaps you
for different reasons.
For different reasons. But I was hoping that you had a slightly easier, but perhaps not. But you're, you know, with the character like Anne, another Anne, the emotional kind of arc of it is slightly different, quieter, but still, you know, rung out a little.
And I think she carried that with her whole life, really. I think a lot of, it's so sad, we were talking about this earlier, because actually what she was dealing with and what she was going through, it were completely manageable things, and she just needed help, and she just needed a friend. And I really do think Anne Lister was her friend before anything else. Like, that's it, she loved her and took care of her, and she just needed the modern thinking that we're sort of almost taking for granted now. She just needed someone to say, you're not crazy, there's nothing wrong with you, you're not damaged, you're not broken, let's talk about it. And I think she was it was really hard in the first series, because she went through it, and you don't want to just, you know, colour that in. They were hard days, weren't they? And you're right, Sally, is so beautiful and so nuanced that there is no just phoning it in, and it's a beautiful thing to do. But it was very challenging, and I think Anne Walker is a challenging character to play because that doesn't leave her. You know, there's a lot of pain and a lot of anguish there. And like I said before, she's on this sort of constant bungee cord. She really does try, but she has this deeply ingrained, internalized homophobia, I think. So there's this fundamental clash in her that she's constantly grappling with. But it was lovely, this series, because I got to be at the Lister's house. And it was great fun, because I said I didn't really meet anyone before in series 1. Didn't have any mates. So I was like, hi guys, I'm the new kid.
We were literally, we were actually going, this is so fun. And Anne.
Gemma Whelan said on day 1, she was like, it's like a little dolly's come to live with us. And it was great, because Anne Walker just sits and takes it all in and is really starry-eyed, and so was I. I was like, it's Tim West, Gemma Jones. This is me. Yeah. So it was lovely seeing her kind of blossom, despite her going back and forth. Yeah, she does grow.
Yeah, she definitely grows. I want to talk just before we open the mics up to you, fabulous audience, just a bit about how the show has been received. Because you never know. I mean, and I know we're on to series 2, but you never know how a show is going to be received. And it has been received so well and is so loved. And, you know, fans adore it so much. And you've, you know, increased everyone visiting to Shibden Hall by like 3 times and, you know, all this kind of stuff. How does that put pressure on you for the second series? Or do you just think, yes, bring it on, you all love us?
The latter, I think.
Yes. Excellent.
It's quite something when you go to Halifax and you see the top hat everywhere. You know,
So
you're
cool.
like, wow. And then obviously the statue that me and Sal revealed, it was just, it's beautiful, isn't it? Like, and you know,
It is extraordinary response to things that have happened since Gentleman Jack, like York University have named a college after Anne Lister.
the plaque is up
the
where
plaque.
they got married.
There's the Anne Lister birthday weekend, which is happening in a few weeks' time. Which is basically organised by superfans of the show. You know, I mean, I don't think any of us anticipated that kind of response. You know, you kind of hope a lot of people will watch it and it gets good reviews. But the kind of response it has had in real terms is, well, it's unprecedented. But then the nature of the show is, it's not an adaptation of a novel. It's a drama based on a diary. That's quite an odd thing in itself, you know. So, and the fact that just so many people didn't know about Anne Lister, who should know about Anne Lister, and now do know about Anne Lister. That's, you know, it's extraordinary. the phenomenon or the effect. There's a documentary called The Gentleman Jack Effect that's being made about the effect.
But it's like she's been put in her rightful place.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so annoying that she's been obscured for so long. You know.
Not for us, because then we've made the show. And we get to celebrate her. But I think the conversation, you have it with Peakies, don't you? There's lots of super fans with Peakies, and I think like the conversation we have as a team with our fans is really welcome, because you know we're like, oh wow, you're really opening yourselves up to our show, and it gives us an immediate reaction. And you know, with the fan art, the stories, the fact that it's actually changed people's lives, which is something we were talking about before, it is extraordinary. This isn't, you know, this is something that can start a conversation for people that perhaps they wouldn't have had tools to do before. So I think it's wonderful in that respect, that you're like, wow, I made something really important, you know, and funny, which is great. But it's an amazing thing to be part of.
I don't think there's a pressure though to, you know, because of that. I think it makes you want to just get it even more right, because you respect how people have responded to it.
Yeah. I always need to think about these things, because I'm like, just give me half an hour.
Can't say share, can we?
You can say share. Yeah.
Always can say icon. Constant icon.
I guess, I mean, there are different icons, aren't there? Like,
Sure.
you know, I had a lot of women in my family. My mum and her sisters were always very strong women in different ways, good northern women. And my mum very shy, but also with a real strength of character underneath, which, you know, I now can share with my son. And, you know, and how to parent. She's not with me anymore, but, you know, that's, I think of her often. So I had a really good relationship with my mother. And then I guess, you know, Julie Walters, Diane Keaton, Meryl Streep, you know, women that, as an actress, that can mould themselves and not be afraid of characters. And I think this has been an opportunity for me to go big or go home, which, you know, Sally would often say when she was directing us, bigger, more. And, you know, as an actor, you often go, oh, I can't, I'm supposed to be doing everything very subtly and,
with
you
my
know.
eyes.
Yes, don't move anything, just do it with your eyes. And so those women that I loved growing up all have physical comedy and physical presence and use their bodies. And I think that there's a reason why I loved them when I was growing up, because it comes out somewhere along your life. And I think it definitely does in this.
Excellent. God, what she said.
Share.
What she said.
Share.
And share.
That is very true, actually. Meryl Streep and Cher is...
We actually called ourselves
yeah,
that for a while,
Meryl
didn't
and
we?
Cher, we did, yeah.
I think for me, I mean, there's so much stuff in the diaries. You know, there are a lot of physical descriptions of Anne Walker in the diaries, and there's a lot of her dialogue in the diaries. So it was all, everything for me was based on what Anne Lister describes in the diary. Obviously, I got all the factual information and descriptions and dialogue from the diary, but as often with the diaries, you can read between the lines. And so I, in writing it, tried to present a fair, rounded portrait of Anne Walker. You know, and Anne Lister is very fair. She does, you know, if Anne Walker says something that Anne Lister doesn't like, she does tell you all that. She does give you all that detail. So Anne Lister does give you a huge amount from the...
I would always take it with a pinch of salt. When she was talking about Anne Walker, I was like, yeah, was she that annoying? But yeah, that was your job, wasn't it? And then it's always our job to come in and be like, okay, then what do I think? That's the beautiful thing about making something like this, is that everybody collaborates and everybody adds. And in many ways, it's kind of beautiful, because we thought there was a portrait of her, didn't we, for a while, and it wasn't her. But yeah, I'm very proud to have, you know, have brought her back into sort of public consciousness, because she was a real woman and she also married a woman, you know, and she was...
Yeah, it always makes me laugh, but a bit cross, on the plaque, you know.
Yeah.
Anne Lister married Anne Walker.
Yeah. Again, we sideline the wife, don't we? Even when it's two women, it's mental. But yeah, it's a tricky thing. But I think you scripted.
I hope that's what's, hopefully the series does redress that to some extent. I mean, I think what's hopefully interesting in season 2 is having been given confidence by Anne Lister, Anne Walker starts to use it, and she uses it against Anne Lister when she needs to. You know, she had the great powers of stubbornness, did Anne Walker, which she used against Anne Lister.
Quite right.
When she needed to.
And to the step counter thing, yes, I did. And I would often say to Stella, who's our producer, let's go for a walk and talk. So she's like, right, okay, walking meeting. So I'd come off set and I would go and walk past your trailer lots.
I'd be like, can I have a cup of tea
Yeah.
if you're passing the tea table?
Sophie didn't do much step counting.
I was marooned in my big frock.
How many did you get then? Like 25,000?
It was a lot, yeah, because yeah, and sometimes I would wear if I had the great coat on as well, I would pop this on underneath. Don't tell any of the costume department that. But yeah, those
Ticking it
days,
off.
yeah.
What's Suranne Jones like? She's lush, yeah.
Yeah, same, yeah. I think yes. I think, like I said, I think we will find out in season 2. You'll see what love is to Anne Lister, but it's a shock to her what love is, I think, and it's not what she thought it was, which isn't that the story for everybody, really. Yeah.
I think the thing specifically about Anne Lister's diary is that it does fire your imagination. It's very uplifting, she's very inspiring, she's this brilliant ball of energy. So again, it's like how big is your imagination to reflect her accurately? So it's not about balancing it up, it's trying to grasp it all and project it all out there in the scripts. Sorry, that's really shit answer.
Thank you.
But that's how I feel.
I think this as a period drama, just, talking about the characters within a period drama, I think when we first talked about what Sally's Gentleman Jack was going to be, it was almost like a steampunk of period drama, and we talked a lot about people relax when they're on their own. People are not just stood on a mantle, with their arm on a mantelpiece. They have personalities and they're real, and sitting in a corset is uncomfortable. And I think that injects all of the character choices as well. And once we decided that that's how we were going to play with this period, I think that loosened us all up to. And then, of course, there's the part where we have to play the period and play the parlour games and everything. But I think that gives you a freedom with character choices, I think. And of course, the writing is just brilliant. I mean, there's no other period drama like this, in my opinion. I certainly don't know of one. So
it's a really interesting question. I did make stuff up in the first series, and by the time it came to the second series, I realised there wasn't enough room to make things up. because the diary is so... Well, it's so Anne-centric. It's all from... it really struck me watching... I've seen that episode about 5 million times now. But it just struck me seeing it again today, how it's just... You're never off the screen, are you? You just drive the whole thing, and it's... and in a way, that's a more accurate reflection of the diaries, that it's so inevitably Anne-centric because it's her diary. So the stuff I made up in season 1 was the story with the Soudens, and that's slightly disappeared in season 2, just to make more space for... I mean, I really respect the journal, and I think the truth is always more interesting than things I can make up. but it's just injecting it with life. But it wasn't hard because the journal's so full of life itself.
Yeah.
Oh, pass.
That makes it quicker.
Yeah.
I'll come back.
I think all the Gemma Whelan's a genius. Don't use that term lightly because she is, and it's just brilliant. In fact, all our cast is. But I love the sibling stuff because within all that, it's just a beautiful relationship. And what Sophie and I were talking about before, we had an interview before, and the care that has been taken with every intimate scene, every moment of love between these two women is talked about and it's represented properly. We understand exactly why we're doing it and how to do it and what it will mean in a short scene. And I think when we get it right, those are beautiful moments, because then you can go off and play the fun, but those moments are wonderful when we get it right.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favourite scene from season 1 was in the church at Holy Trinity, because that was so extraordinary that we were filming in the church where they really did get married, and I think we kind of felt it on the day when we were filming it, and it was, for me that was a really emotional day, and it looked lovely the way Matt shot it. It was really beautiful. One of my other favourite scenes is the opening of episode 2 of season 2, but I won't tell you what it is.
It was kind of like it was for Anne Walker. I was like a bit overwhelmed by how quickly everyone was talking, and you know, I'd been sort of all chintzy teacups and sort of posh relatives, and then everyone was like diving in and doing stuff, and I was a bit bowled over, but it was so much fun to be there. And I'd also heard all the stories from season 1 from my little birdcage in Crow's Nest. But yeah, it was just as I think you would hope. I mean, we explore it all in season 2, so I don't want to give too much away, but it's just what you would hope. What is it like to land Anne Walker in that sort of dynamic and be totally bowled over by the new in-laws?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was so much fun. It was like, I kept saying to Sophie, you're coming to dinner, you're coming to dinner. And there's, I don't know, let's say 6 or 7 big scenes, aren't there? Like big dinner scenes, so there's a lot. Actually, one of them, I can't tell you about, is my favourite scene in the whole thing because it's so funny. And we're all there. So, yeah, it was brilliant.
Sally!
I think you'll really enjoy it. It's quite complex. Sophie doesn't know what happens.
Yeah, what happens at Christmas?
You don't need to know about that, darling.
It's all right, Sophie.
It's
Nothing
fine.
happens.
No.
It's fine.
On a serious note, Lydia, who plays Mariana, who's exquisite, and it is almost a two-hander, isn't it? I think that's not spoiling things too much, but the whole episode explores their relationship, why they are like they are, and then whatever happens in Lawton Hall happens.
Yeah. Right. I'd just like to say thank you for all those brilliant questions, because I know it can be a bit intimidating to come and ask them. We're really grateful that you did, and they were really great. It's fantastic to see you all. I'm really being stared at now. We really have to go. But I would like to say thank you for being a fabulous audience, and thank you to our fantastic panel, Suranne, Sophie, Sally.